Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coffee with the Dev. Today, we are talking all things animation. I am joined with Khoa Lee, our principal animator, and David Wilkinson, our director of animation. Both of them have many years in the industry. They've worked on plenty of different titles, and today we're going to be chatting with them about all things animation here at 1047. David, if you would do a quick introduction, quick little spiel, I will pass it on to Khoa, and then the floor should be open for questions.
I'm David. Been doing animation since the 90s. I started off in 2D animation, eventually moved across to 3D, working in games. I started at BioWare, working on Mass Effect. Then I shifted across to, because BioWare was Edmonton, I moved to Montreal, and I was the animation director on the Prince of Persia that came out in 2008, just called Pop. Then I went back to BioWare in Montreal, worked on Mass Effect 2 and 3, and then I came back to Ubisoft and worked on Assassin's Creed 3 and Child of Light, Far Cry 4, Far Cry 5, Hyperscape, games like that. Then I left and joined 1047.
Yeah, my name's Khoa. So I've been in the industry for about 18 years now. So started off in the industry at a small startup before I joined Sony Visual Arts Service Group. That was where I started my career in AAA. My first AAA title, which was Uncharted 2. From there, worked on Killzone 3, Infamous 2, Uncharted 3, among a slew of other fun titles like Mod Nation Racers. I'm doing the cinematics work there. And then right after that, I joined Insomniac Games, where I worked on Ratchet and Clank, Sunset Overdrive, Fuse, which was originally called Overstrike. And then from there, I transferred over to Infinity Ward, where my first Call of Duty title was Infinite Warfare. And then from there, I became a lead animator on Modern Warfare, transitioning to first-person animation, and then eventually worked my way up to animation director for about a year and a half on the current ongoing title there, which I cannot say. And then from there, I joined 1047 as a principal.
Great. Thank you both. Quick, small introduction here, just to list off the community members that are here with us today. Mega Buppish, Lefora, and Kaza, thank you all for your time as well. I would say that we're good to go ahead and just open up the conversation for some questions. If anyone wants to kick us off, we can go ahead and get started.
What's a common mistake you see beginner animators make when applying for jobs or showing reels?
Common mistake I generally see is that animators, when you're young and you're still learning and you're just doing stuff your own, there's a lot of projects that you tend to work on, but not everything is necessarily equal. And so it's really having an awareness to know, and the discipline to kind of know what you can leave out, and only putting your strongest work in your reel, and being really, really, really objective about that, even though you might be very attached to a certain piece. But if there's clear, obviously mistakes that you could do better, then sometimes it's better to just keep it off your reel. But that is a common mistake I see regularly, is students just wanting to pile on their reel and put everything that they've done on there to showcase it, hey, look, I can animate. But really, you just need a fewer number of really, really, really good animations to help convey your ability, because you're only as good as your weakest piece. There's a bunch of other things, but I won't take up too much of the speaking time. I'm sure Dave has other things.
I was going to say just exactly that, but more sweary.
So it sounds like a lot of quality over quantity to some degree then.
Yeah, it's better to have 30 seconds of bangers than 2.5 minutes of dog shit with 30 seconds of bangers peppered in between.
There's another aspect to it too, I think, in terms of, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's also not just about length in terms of your portfolio or the type of work, or the good stuff versus the bad stuff, but it's also just pertinent to understand where you're applying. Generally, when you're hired at a studio, you're rarely going to be a generalist, and even as a generalist, you tend to be typecasted or your managers want to kind of play to your strengths. If you're applying to a studio that, let's say, has a more cartoonier set of IPs and types of games, or even film or TV, where the stylistic choices for that given project is exaggerated, then if you're applying your demo reel, you shouldn't be sending in a demo reel that has realistic animation on it, because it just doesn't fit the visual style that the client is looking for or the studio is looking for. And so for me, I've always been a big proponent in having several different reel types that will showcase my ability depending on where I want to apply to. I have a director's reel, I have a first-person animation reel, and then I have a cinematics reel, all related to animation. But I would pick and choose whichever reel that's more focused on that discipline, if it fits the studio style that I'm applying at.
I'm curious what tools you guys are using. Do you do a lot of mocap?
We're primarily a Maya-based team, and it's a pretty standard. It's pretty standard across the industry, and there might be a sprinkling of Motion Builder in there or 3D Studio Max. And another common, I think, for beginners, and it's also free and cheaper, is a lot of people are starting to learn how to animate, especially in doing first-person stuff. They've used Blender. Just because it's so easily accessible. It's similar to Maya, different kind of hotkeys and whatnot, but it's just another tool. At the end of the day, you're setting a key, you're manipulating curves, and that's been a good kind of gateway for aspiring animators to go from something that they can access without paying an insane license fee monthly or annually, and then that tends to then be something that they can then transition into Maya at a studio at some point. I think you're generally going to find that most studios, anything that with humanoid characters, will primarily be mocap based, just because it'd be just too time consuming to hand key from scratch, just full body mechanics. And so the first person tends to be keyframe because it requires just too much precise movement. If you mocap the weapon reloads, what tends to happen, if you've ever manipulated a firearm before, is your body just has to always move and contort and shift in a certain way to make it biomechanically comfortable. And that then in turn, what that does is it just moves your spine, moves your head. And within first person gameplay, as a player, you're seeing everything done within this aspect ratio of your screen, like a 16:9 aspect ratio, and the camera has to be very still. So if you were to apply motion capture data on top of that, what ends up happening is that gun movement ends up moving more on screen than a player would like, and any extra movement or extravagant movement tends to take the viewer's eye and distract the eye from where it needs to focus, which is usually on your reticle and at your target that you're looking at. And so it requires then a lot more tweaking on an animator's end to clean up that data, tone it back, which then becomes a time waste. So if you have a team of animators that can essentially achieve that realistic level of animation by hand keyframing it, then that's probably the more efficient route, and it's probably quicker than cleaning up the motion capture data.
I actually had a question, which is unique because I haven't done this before. But a big thing that Ian was looking for, David, when we were working originally on animations with factions, was Eros was meant to be very light and flashy versus Sabrask, which was much more just like rigid. How did you and the team go about sort of defining the difference between the two factions in regards to like the weight distribution of a weapon, for example?
Ian loves basketball. So in the end, we keep referencing basketballers, but what I found was more useful for the team was actually talking about it in terms of their motivations. So for instance, for Eros, because they're the more athletic faction, or they were the more athletic faction, we stuck with basketball. That's cool. But rather than it being basketball, it was the Harlem Globetrotters, where it's just all flash, it's all entertainment. They're obviously talented, but it's all too much, but it's really fun to watch. And then to contrast that with Sabrask, we were like, well, if that's basketball, let's talk more American football or rugby. So it's a lot more physical. All the guns kind of lent themselves towards it. They all look more like power tools than guns. They're just so heavy and clunky. And so we kind of treated everything like that. Like you can just smash things in. You can just throw them down, not care about them. It's that kind of, it's just heavy machinery. Then with Meridian, we, just as like a contrast between the both of them, we decided these are more like, it's actually the weapon that is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. It's just like a more precisely machined thing. And so that was more interaction with the weapon itself, pushing certain buttons, doing certain things that would get the weapon to like eject a mag or something like that. And it was less of a physical effort and more of just letting the gun do a lot of the work. And that way we kind of defined the three factions, and you got that vibe of like, this behaves like this behaves like that.
I did actually study a lot of the players that Ian would mention. I specifically looked at dunk and how each of those players dunked. There's a sense of spacing and speed and timing of that, and then the follow through of that I felt was a nice kind of reference point for me. And so if you look at LeBron, for example, when he dunks, he tends to have this huge overarching action. It's almost like an exaggerated like trophy pose that he was going for, and that ended up being so much bigger of an action that he also then had to slam it even harder because it still has to travel all this distance to get that ball into the hoop. And so there was always a heaviness to it. And once it hit, it just bam, he just hung on and then ripped his hand off of the hoop. And if I looked at Steph Curry, he was like, he had enough flashiness, but everything about his body is super controlled. Like there's not a lot of excess movement. Even when he's doing the flourishy stuff, it's so contained, and like there's a stillness to his spine. There's an efficiency to his movement, and so we saw that as like the Meridian's way of doing things, which is everything is about efficiency, getting point A to point B really, really efficiently without any flourish. It's just, the gun will do the work for me, and then of course arrows it's all just I don't care. I'm gonna twirl this mag because I can.
Yep.
You're kind of working at the intersection of the art design and the audio design, and I'm assuming you have to do something to make all those things work together with the animation. How do you do that? How do you make that work behind the scenes?
We had a concept team, a weapons concept team, who would come up with ideas for guns. We would have a meeting every week with them, talking to us as the animators and presenting what their thoughts were. Those were really interesting meetings. They'd usually be 30 minutes. They could go anywhere as long as an hour. That would bring us up to speed with what they wanted to see from their concept. And so that was good. That helped inform us. And then at the same time, we could then talk to them about technical limitations, or this might be a problem, or how does my hand even fit on that? And then from there, that would then go through, like once it was approved and everybody was on board with it, that would then go through the whole art pipeline where it gets made and turned into a real thing. It's given the tech art, it's then put into the engine, it's rigged, it's then given to the animation team. I mean, technically, tech animation team's doing all the rigging, so it's already in the animation team at that point, but it would get built, it would be given to us. We've already got an understanding of how the weapon's meant to work. Oftentimes, I would be talking to the team and going, who wants it? Like, who's interested in this? And then whoever seemed to be the most keen would get it, and then we'd work together to get all the animations made. We'd get the animations made. They wouldn't be final. We'd get them to what we'd refer to as L2, which is pretty much like, it's like 80% quality. It's in the engine. It functions as intended. And to get it there it doesn't take that long. It's like 2 weeks, basically, to knock out something which is like 70 to 80% quality. And then from there, design can then muck around, change around timing, have thoughts, share their thoughts with us. If there's anything that we needed to address before it went to sound, we'd go back and address it. And then it would go to sound. Sound would do their pass on just like an L2 pass of like throwing in the sound. And the whole point of this process was to get everything made quickly, so that everything can sit side by side, and then you can start to compare how does everything feel relative to each other. And then once we're agreed on this is all good, then we can go back and we can add the spit polish to it, which is like, to get that last 30% anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks.
Out of all of the, emotes and gun animations, what was your favorite one animating?
There's some guns that haven't been released that have got some of my favorite stuff on them. The guns that are in the game, probably shout out to Parker. The very first pistol he did was the Arrows Burst, where you do a little flip to kick out the mag, and then you put the new one in and just flip it back. And that was fun as well because Parker's like stunningly talented, but he's also very like methodical. He needs to know why. And he really didn't understand why we'd be flipping around guns. And I was like, because it's fun. And it was just like,
It's arrows.
I wouldn't do that. And I'm like, right, you wouldn't, but these guys would. So and he's like, so what, you just mean like this? And just in front of me, he animated the gun that, like, he did the animation that's in the game in front of us. And I was just like, yo, this kid's pretty good. And then it felt exactly as good in the game. So, yeah, that was probably my favorite one. And just also because it was fun making it with Parker.
Yeah, I can't say that there's anything favorite, even because I've only joined with the company back in April, and so I've only touched a few weapons. But yeah, I think Parker's work, specifically those pistol reloads, are probably some of my favorite animations, because it wasn't just twirling a mag; it was like you're twirling the entire gun, and the Western lover in me is always like, if there's a gun twirl, I'm good. Like, that's the most fun part. But to build that into a reload rather than just an inspect is a whole nother layer of fun. And so props to Parker Chapman, if you're listening or watching.
Awesome. No, I think that's a great question to end on. So Khoa, David, Mega Bubfish, Lifora, and Kaza, thank you guys for your time. Really appreciated. And yeah, we'll see you in the future.